Everybody can hear me okay? Just a thumbs up or something.
Yes.
Excellent. We'll wait for a minute or two past the hour. This is being recorded, so people can follow along the recordings if they have to check out early or something like that. There's like 120 people registered, or at least there were a few hours ago. So we'll see how many people come today. For those of you who know For Humanity meetings, I should have put music on to start. It's a
I
mistake.
came in early just for the tunes. I'm kind of disappointed, but then again, I'm super excited to see all these other people joining us in the sandbox for today. Yay! So sing for us a little bit, maybe,
I,
Brian.
I,
Can you?
I could, and I have in the past. So, but see, now you're just tempting me. I had a song. I had to drive my son to, he does orchestra before school on Tuesdays. And the Cardigans song Love Fool, which I think was a late 90s song that was, kind of different at the time, if any of you know Cardigans. um, was on, and I hadn't heard it in a long time. So that's rolling around in my brain, but I'm not about to sing Love Fool. So, all right. Um, let's get started. I'm going to share two documents with you, and we're going to really go through and talk through these. So let's see this slideshow, and I have not set this one up yet. So I'll share screen because we're going to use these as well. All right, so there's a PowerPoint that you are all welcome to have. I really just dashed it together over there, well, over about an hour this morning, because we're really going to focus on working on a Word document that highlights all the details. Here is, all right, there's the PowerPoint, and here is the Word document that we'll be working off of. What's the share function on this? Also restricted. All right, here's the Word document. All right, let's get started. Not everyone here is familiar with For Humanity. Some of you have known For Humanity for a long time, so I apologize for the background check here. But let me give a little bit on For Humanity, and then we'll step into the details of the AI Policy Accelerator. For those of you not familiar with For Humanity meetings, we do a lot of open source, crowdsourced meetings with a good number of people in the room. The chat is my kryptonite. So as I'm presenting, as I'm talking through, as I'm handling questions, I'm very bad at seeing the chat. So if you ask a question in the chat, some of my For Humanity colleagues, and by the way, all of you are welcome to be For Humanity colleagues, but some of you who are used to that may help me out and point out something that's in the chat, which is always welcome. But really, I want to encourage you to ask your questions out loud, and we'll talk through all of them. You are not interrupting me to ask questions. I know all of this and everything we're going to talk about like the back of my hand. So if you have questions as I'm talking through something, feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to interrupt. Feel free to ask a question. You are not interrupting. I want to answer your questions, and that's what this session is about today. Background on ForHumanity. I'll use my slide, I guess, to start with the background. So this is a nonprofit public charity that I founded back in 2016 after a 25-year finance career. We are run the majority of the control of ForHumanity. So I'm the executive director and also a member of the board of directors. But we do have a board of directors, the majority of whom are elected by our community and really by the leaders of that community, which are ForHumanity fellows, of which some of them are represented here today. We have about 2,300 people from 98 countries around the world. We've built well over 50 different certification schemes, all in varying stages of development and approval, some of which are actually sitting with government officials and regulators, such as our GDPR certification scheme for AI, which is currently being reviewed by the EDPB and should go out for a 30-day consultation sometime within the next month or two. Our primary mission is to examine and analyze the downside risk associated with AI, algorithmic and autonomous systems, but we accept those tools where they are. So there's very few things that we sort of outright prohibit or think that's really, really bad for humanity. But we do support when governments and regulators want to ban certain uses of AI, such as the EU AI Act prohibitions. So we do support that. But otherwise, we want to examine and analyze these tools. Why? To engage in the maximum amount of risk mitigations. Why? Because if we maximize risk mitigations on all these tools, then we maximize the benefit of these tools for humanity. And that's where the overly ambitious name of the organization comes from. So in building these more than 50 plus certification schemes, and we have a full certification scheme for the EU AI Act, you will see that. You will learn how to even get access to it because it's part of what this AI policy accelerator is. We have GDPR, we have the Digital Services Act, we've got the Children's Code. We've got schemes all around the world, not just in Europe, but in the US, unfair, deceptive, abusive practices, California privacy, New York City bias audit, for example, for ADTs. So we do work all around the world and have country teams. We have country teams scheduled and set up that meet regularly all around the world, and a whole bunch of open meetings that you can find on our website, which I may point you to before the end of this. So the primary mission of ForHumanity is to support an ecosystem, we call it an infrastructure of trust, around independent audit of AI systems, which is really a whole level deeper than the conformity assessments that are called for in the EU AI Act. We advocate that it is a more robust system of enforcement if eventually, and we're not mature enough yet for this, but if eventually we have mandatory annual audits for all high-risk AI systems and third-party independent auditors who are creating a uniform assessment process for determining compliance with critical regulations like the EU AI Act. And so because the EU AI Act is so impactful, because it is written on a principles-based approach, because the law actually allows for its own regulatory sandboxes, what ForHumanity is doing here with the AI Policy Accelerator is just advancing that work more quickly, or advancing that work under our timetable, if you will, in support of the EU AI Act, in support of standards development and the work that CEN-CENELAC JTC 21 is doing. For those of you not familiar with CEN-CENELAC JTC 21, that is the standards body. CEN-CENELAC is the European standards body with representation from national standards bodies all across Europe. And that group or that body is tasked with, under standardization requests from the EU Commission and Parliament, to create the conformity assessments that are called for in the law. Because The law is principles-based. What it doesn't do is get into sufficient details about what that conformity assessment might look at. And that's where we're coming in. What we're aiming to do is to work with interpretations of the law and work with interpretations and the work that the standards bodies are doing to identify what conformity looks like in a practical sense and in a practical way. And so that is what the AI Policy Accelerator is aiming to do from a mission perspective. And so let's talk about what those modules, for example, look like. We break down the EU AI Act into, and there's more underlying pieces than this. So, but the policy accelerator work that we're doing, we're breaking down into 9 modules, independent modules, where we will do specific work on entry and exit criteria that's agreed by the people who are working in that module. And we'll get back to what that means in a minute. But one example of that is a risk management module. Another example is monitoring, okay? Now, what's missing from this, there's some easy examples. Technical documentation, Article 11, is missing from this list of 9 modules. So what I'm not trying to tell you, what ForHumanity is not trying to say, is that the sum of these 9 modules equals EU AI Act compliance or EU AI Act conformity. It does not. However, this is a large portion of what that conformity may look like, okay? And not knowing what AI systems are going to go into each of these modules, I can't actually comment as to whether it's, sort of chapter 2 sort of compliance, or is it chapter 3 sort of compliance where we're talking about like general purpose AI, because we don't know what types of AIs are going to come through this accelerator, okay? The point, however, of the accelerator is that we're going to invite participants of all kinds to join the conversation. And so the first 2 groups that we want to talk about inviting are providers and members. And now we're going to start to get into some of the details of how this works. A provider, I'm going to part B first. I should have flipped these, but part B first. A provider is the same use of the terminology as exists in the law. It is someone who develops what we call, ForHumanity calls a AAA system, AI, algorithmic, and autonomous systems, AAA. So if you hear me use that term, that's our scope of looking at the world. Even though the EU AI Act is focused on AI, we kind of think in a more broad term, and sometimes I'm going to slip and use that terminology. But a provider of an AI system is one who designs and develops the tool, who trains the model, and then who distributes it through any one of a number of ways, through an importer, through a distributor, through deployers, and sometimes directly to what we call AI subjects. And the law sometimes refers to as natural persons or users, okay? So when we talk about providers, what we are actually seeking are organizations who the law would describe as a provider. Now, I want to be clear about something here. The law is built for high-risk AI, okay? Right? The law asks you to make a call or a determination as to whether your artificial intelligence system is high risk as they define it, and that could be based on harmonized standards, could be based on common specifications, could be based on Annex 3, okay? We are not asking you, the potential providers, to make that determination. You don't need to. You're not making any declaration of high-risk AI. What we are asking you to think about is, and I'm just going to slide back to this slide for a second, is would your artificial intelligence tool, lack of a better term, system, would it benefit from going into, for example, the AI Policy Accelerator module on risk management, building robust risk management that at the end of that risk management construction process would satisfy the EUAI Act. Maybe because you're high-risk AI, or maybe because you simply think, I want to make sure that I've got robust risk management built around this tool. It's important for you to understand that this isn't about a determination that it is high risk. Now, I totally understand if organizations that come into this accelerator are assuming or thinking about the fact that they are high risk. But we need not make that assumption. It doesn't change how ForHumanity approaches compliance with the EUAI Act when we talk about entry criteria. Where it may matter, and I'm going to slide ahead a couple of slides. I want to put this in front of you as well. Wait, where is it? Here it is. Where it may matter is when we finish or figure out what that exit criteria looks like. So we're going to start with ForHumanity audit criteria. That's the entry criteria, okay? But and you can see that on the bottom right-hand side. But in the process of managing this module, under the guidance of a paid project leader, so a ForHumanity person who will be assigned with taking the provider of an AI tool, looking at that entry criteria, harmonizing that with the group of people who are in the module against what the standards developments that's currently being developed and against interpretations of the EUAI Act. And through that process, they will agree on what the exit criteria is. So the provider and ForHumanity, in a consensus discussion with all the members of the module, will figure out what that exit criteria looks like, okay? And so that's the process by which, scrolling back, each one of these modules will produce output that is meant to conform to the EUAI Act. In addition to that, the module under ForHumanity's responsibility will also produce a public report on the work that we develop. This could be templates. This could be guidance notes. This could be public disclosure documents, whether they're required by the EUAI Act or required because our exit criteria demands or believes that these should be public documents, like something like a data transparency document. Some of you may know this term as a model card or data sheet, okay? So this type of output will go into a public report, but I want to be clear to all potential providers here. Providers have complete control over a couple of things. Number one, providers have complete control over the information that goes into the module from a confidentiality standpoint, okay? If you believe that any elements of necessary requirements of compliance, okay, because we determined that the entry or exit criteria says this is what you need for compliance, right? If any of that you feel as the provider should be kept confidential, and think about what that means. Under a conformity assessment, you can do a self-assessment, so you wouldn't have to tell anybody anything, right? Under that confidentiality. Let's say it related to some sort of intellectual property. Or if you were getting a third-party conformity assessment from a notified body or from an auditor, okay, you can hold them to confidentiality as well, and thus only that select group of people sees what you would consider to be confidential. We will work the same way, in the sense that if you declare as a provider that some of your information needs to be confidential, then it will be kept confidential between me and the project lead and any other persons we require and that you approve to review that confidential information. Same as you would with a third-party notified body, same as you would with an independent auditor. So as you're going through all of what these criteria look like and generating this compliance, you have the ability to control that confidential information. In addition to that, when it comes to that confidential information, you have control over who may see it. So I don't think in this context that you need to worry about things like, are there competitors in the room? I'm talking about my AI. Why am I showing that to my potential competitor? Well, the answer to that question is because the only things you're going to show in public are going to be the things that have to be produced in public or have to be released in public. And so the things that you want to protect, we can protect under confidentiality in the agreements that we establish. Okay. So when we talk about participants, we are talking about two groups of participants. One is the provider, and this provider will bring an artificial intelligence to the module of their choosing. So if I were to go back to those 9 modules, I'm just going to pick a random group. I don't even know if they're in the room, so I'm just going to say a name out loud, but for no reason other than it's a big, well-known firm. Okay. Google could choose to join one of these AI policy accelerators. Okay. Google could say, here's the AI that I want to use, and I want to go straight into monitoring. Maybe they feel like they've got key pieces of risk management and data management and governance. Maybe they feel like they have those handled already, but they want to go to monitoring. Okay. They can choose to go directly into that individual module. And under contract, they will see a list of what we call entry criteria, a list of ForHumanity pre-existing audit criteria. We've been working on these audit criteria since April 28th of 2021. Okay. So we have a full certification scheme for the EU AI Act already in place. Now we're still refining it right now on a weekly basis. We have a whole series of meetings that look at the final draft of the law against what we've established and just reconciling, kind of crossing our I's and crossing our T's and dotting our I's. Sorry, I was going to say that backwards. Making sure that the audit criteria is the best we think it can be. So that will be included in a contract with the provider to say, here's what the entry criteria is. Here's what you can expect, Google, under contract, that we will accomplish and we will achieve together to satisfy these entry criteria. Now, the module, in conjunction with all the participants, and we'll go through the rest of the participants in a minute, the module will figure out what the exit criteria is in agreement with Google, so that Google is getting everything that they expect for their AI system in the monitoring module at the end of this work. Okay. And so in that process, the provider is fully in charge of this module and what happens in it, coordinated with the operating body, which is our it's not a subsidiary, it's our European arm of ForHumanity called ForHumanity Europe, which is a French charitable association. It's a 1901 association. For those of you who know French structures, it is a nonprofit public charity established in France and will be the contracting organization for the AI Policy Accelerator, operating all of these modules. So the provider comes in under contract. You can see the price that's listed there. We expect the provider to pay 10,000 euro into the module. Now, what are you paying for? Let's talk about this for a second. Primarily, you're paying for dedicated ForHumanity resources sitting on top of this process and ensuring we go from start to finish. We will have a dedicated project lead, a paid person whose sole responsibility is to get you from start to finish. And that's actually the primary thing that you're paying for in here. And if you think about if you were paying a consultant, for example, well, what would it cost me to ensure that I'm compliant with the monitoring, the continuous and post-market monitoring section of the EU AI Act? 10,000 euros would be inexpensive, broadly speaking. And part of the reason for that is look, ForHumanity is a nonprofit public charity. We're doing this because it supports our mission. We're doing this because the easier that compliance is made, the easier that conformity is made, the more people conform. The more people reduce risk to humans by following the act. And so we accomplish our mission by having more and more people find this easier and easier to do, by building compliance capacity across their organization. Now, not every organization is going to want to bring an AI system, and that's fine. We do want you, however, to be there with us, crowdsourcing transparently that the solutions, the compliance, learning from that process, helping to produce those results by bringing your volunteer work or by participating in this process as members. So corporations can join the AI Policy Accelerator simply as members. When you become a member of the AI Policy Accelerator, then you are able to see or sit within all 9 of the modules. Simply watch the process, learn from the process, maybe have members of your team participate in the process in helping to develop solutions, compliance solutions, compliance capacity, documentation that needs to be produced, and so on. All of that will be happening in the modules. And so providers and members are the 2 paid roles that exist in the AI Policy Accelerator. I want to pause there for a minute. I've said a lot of words over 24 minutes. And see if there are questions. Please raise your hand if you do. And again, if you used the chat to maybe ask a question or something like that, I haven't seen it yet. So any questions so far in terms of members and providers, particularly, or the 9 AI Policy Accelerator modules? No questions, or you're shy, one or the other.
The chat is clear.
Excellent. Thank you for checking that for me, Heidi. Okay, let's talk about why we're calling this an AI Policy Accelerator, why it's not a regulatory sandbox for a moment. The answer to this is very simple. You don't have to comply with the law yet. So there's no need for the regulatory oversight that comes with a regulatory sandbox. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with how regulatory sandbox is, first off, Adam Leon Smith, who is a board member at ForHumanity, drafted a really nice paper. I can link to it, or maybe one of my colleagues in ForHumanity might find it and provide the link in the chat. Goes through the details of what a regulatory sandbox is, how it works, even the history of regulatory sandboxes. But in the end, the summary is that a regulatory sandbox is when you have to comply with law, but you're not sure if you do or how to do it. So some organizations will approach regulators. Regulators may approach those organizations and say, we have this sandbox. We have this place where you can feel safe. Safety is the key here. You can feel safe as a provider of an AI system to test or check with us if we have generated, if you, the AI provider, have generated proper compliance. And it's a back and forth, a give and take. Usually there's a very defined nature of what's going to be tested and what's going to be developed in that regulatory sandbox. But in this case, there are very limited aspects of the EU AI Act that will come into required compliance prior to August of 2026. Now, some elements of it do, like AI literacy, is due starting in February of 2025. Okay. So there are elements that will begin to be required, but in general, the statement that I made that we don't need regulatory relief from the Commission, from Parliament right now, is because the law is not enforceable, right? So as a result of that, the participants who would usually be in a regulatory sandbox would be the provider and the regulator, right? The regulators aren't ready to do this. The regulators who are permitted under the law will be able to establish a regulatory sandbox in each one of the 27 EU member states. Okay? These are not ready yet. The work that we're doing here is fully in support of that future effort. We would be more than happy to have future regulators, future members of the national competent authorities, the national supervisory authorities, in some cases, the national data protection authorities, members of the EU Parliamentary AI Board, members of the Commission. They're all welcome in this room. Now, if they're part of any of those formal organizations, we do not expect them to be here in a formal capacity. But we would be more than happy for them to be here learning. Again, that's part of our mission. We want to foster what compliance looks like for members of Parliament, for members of the Commission, for members of the AI Board, for members of each of these national governing bodies. They are welcome to be here. Now, we have relationships with many of these people. And behind the scenes, even if they are not here in the room, as we build this compliance, we're going to share this work with them. And if they come back to us, and this is a little bit about ForHumanity's authority, ForHumanity does all of this work under very limited authority. The limited authority that we have is that we are doing things in a transparent, crowdsourced way on behalf of humans, broadly speaking, that mission statement. We don't claim any further authority than that. When we build any of our certification schemes, what we do is we seek government and regulatory approval for our certification schemes where those governments and regulators are prepared to approve it. And when they are not, then we will seek marketplace adoption on a voluntary basis. In both cases, the authority is not ours. So we are subservient to this process. We are subservient to the infrastructure that already exists. We are subservient to CENELAC JTC 21 when they build robust, auditable standards. Now, it is not the goal of CENELAC and JTC 21 to build auditable standards. Their job is just to do standards. Auditable for us means one step deeper. It means where you're taking a rule, a standard, a criteria, and you're turning it into a binary, defining it in a binary way, so that a third-party independent auditor can look at your compliance and go compliant or not compliant with the least amount of gray, ideally no gray, in that determination between compliant and non-compliant. That's what differentiates ForHumanity from most standards organizations around the world. We are trying to get down to that detailed criteria level where each individual audit criteria is binary, okay? And so when you see the details that we provide, that is the reason, the rationale for why we do the work that we do in support of independent audit of AI systems. And ForHumanity plays two roles in this whole process. We aim to create audit rules, give them to government and regulators for approval, and then we train people on these audit rules. We train auditors. We train compliance experts. We train pre-audit service providers. We train teachers. We train technologists who want to build these solutions in a compliance by design sort of way on what this audit criteria looks like. So that's the role that ForHumanity aims to play in building and supporting this AI policy accelerator. And so in doing so, we already have a crowdsourced, transparent process that fits what's needed to happen in each one of these 9 AI policy accelerator modules. And so the other groups that we invite to participate in this process are notified bodies named under the law as organizations that can provide third-party certification, assurance of conformity assessments, of conformity for a high-risk AI provider. And audit firms. Obviously, we support independent audit of AI systems. We support the growing world of algorithmic auditors. And so we invite both notified bodies and audit firms to join us in the AI policy accelerator. Why? Because we want them to come with their notified body hat or their auditor hat to look at and review the compliance that we build. the audit criteria that we describe, to look at and review all of those details and say, yep, if I saw that, if the provider of this AI tool gave me this compliance information, if they gave me this, what we call a deployer's guide, which is Article 13 transparency from providers to deployers. Okay. If they produced what you've just produced in that transparency of providers, and you produce this deployer's guide in the fashion that it's been produced, I, as the auditor, in my independence, I would approve that you've met this criteria, that you've met all of your obligations under the EUAI Act, Article 13. And so that is the role that notified bodies and auditors will play in this circle, is to bring that lens of determination that this is satisfactory compliance. And then finally, we want to invite academics and any other volunteers. I don't care what your background is. I don't care where you came from. Maybe you're making a career switch. Maybe you've been part of ForHumanity for years, but you haven't found the spot that you fit in yet, right? Maybe you're brand new to all this and you see this wave of regulation coming and you're saying, my company does this and we want to build compliance, but I'm just going to get in there and I'm going to learn it for myself. All of these individuals and volunteers are welcome to participate. When ForHumanity talks about 2,300 people from 98 countries, these are who we're talking about. These are the people who are already here. These are the people who have helped us build our body of knowledge stores, which gets into the details of guidance and notes and templates on how to comply with all of our existing rules. These people are already doing the work. But let me speak to you as an academic or a volunteer. You may be planning to teach about the EUAI Act. You may be planning to become an auditor or a pre-audit service provider, or your friend is building a technology and you want to go to work with them in your new startup to help facilitate compliance with all these laws and rules and regulations. And you want to learn the details of what it takes to generate compliance. What better way than to come in and actually do it? So we're asking volunteers, we're asking academics to participate in this process. Now, what's in it for you? Hopefully a lot. Number one, we are asking providers to agree that if volunteers and academics participate sufficiently, if they do enough volunteer work in this process, and you do it on your own time, you do it whenever it suits you. This is a 24/7 operation at ForHumanity, okay? So you can volunteer, you can fulfill any duties that you choose to commit to. Let's say you and two people agree to draft a template for that deployer's guide, okay, that Article 13 transparency. Well, maybe you're creating that template on your own time. But I imagine that if you were able to say at the end of this, yes, Google came into that to the transparency module, and I'm allowed to tell you that I participated in drafting their AI deployer's guide. I have to assume that that is powerful experience on your resume. I have to assume that that is powerful learning opportunity that you're not going to get most other places. And so I want to encourage all of you to be able to try to join these modules where you see that your volunteer time can benefit your experience, can benefit your ability to further and foster your career, or because you think it's the right thing to do. That's why I do this job. That's why I sit in my executive director seat. That's why I founded ForHumanity. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, to help foster this work, to help further people's ability to comply with this important law. This is what we want to encourage people to participate in. If you have the time, if you have the ability to contribute to this process, it is important. It's very important for so many organizations to learn and grow from this process. Remember, there's a public report that is produced about the work that's done that can be shared publicly. Okay. In addition, you're going to be doing work with providers directly, and maybe it helps you get a job in a place. Maybe it helps you connect to them. Maybe it helps you get your next consulting gig. I have no idea, but I don't mind, and ForHumanity never minds, if you come at this process with a good volunteer's heart, which we love, we celebrate that, or if you come at this and go, this gives me a great chance to build my resume, to foster my experience, to do a career pivot, and to get my foot in the door someplace. Don't care if you come with that agenda about yourself. That's good for people too, because we are aligned. Okay. So we've got really three groups of people, no, three types of organizations or people who are participating. No, I'm going to say four. They're participating in the AI Policy Accelerator. Number one, ForHumanity. Myself and the project lead in each one of the modules will be driving this work forward. We'll be monitoring and governing the entire process. This is key and critical to our mission. The second group are corporations coming in either as providers of AI systems, giving us an actual use case for which the work will be done, whether that's a risk management, whether that's transparent. Let's go back to the list, and we can even talk through what all of these things mean if you need to. Number one, general governance, oversight, and accountability. What sort of structure do you need to put in place to know that you have the ability to achieve compliance with the Act? Number two, ethical oversight, things like fundamental rights impact assessments. I'm going to skip AI literacy for a second. Risk management. Do you have Article 9 risk management compliance? And by the way, the whole law is risk-based. So risk management is key and critical to compliance and conformity for the entirety of the law. Article 10, data management and governance. Have I done all of the things? Have I documented all of the key and critical pieces of relevancy, representativeness, suitability, availability of data, process, proving that the statistical characteristics of my training, testing, and validation data set were similar? All the Annex 4 requirements and duties under data management and governance. Human oversight and interactions. Have I created Article 14 compliance? Have I created somebody who will commonly be known as a human on the loop? We call it a human in command because the law actually requires that human on the loop have extra trainings and have extra duties and responsibilities. So we differentiate between a common human on the loop and what the EU AI Act Article 14 calls for a human, and we call it a human in command. What are their duties and responsibilities? How does that human integrate with the process? This is what we might call an Article 14 module. Transparency requirements. Article 13, we talked about this in a little bit in terms of the disclosure, what we call a deployer's guide. Maybe think of it like a user's guide, right? Monitoring, Article 60, well, is it still 61? I apologize if the article has changed, but post-market and continuous monitoring required of deployed, placed on the market, put into service AI systems. And then finally, Article 17, QMS, quality management systems, how this integrates with your existing ISO 9001 compliant management system, and or how it has to adapt to both compliance with the law, regulatory compliance, and obviously the newness of artificial intelligence and how that impacts quality control, quality assurance, and so on. So these are the 9 AI Policy Accelerator modules. Groups are welcome to join a single module. Groups are welcome to go, I'll do governance, oversight, accountability, but then I want to do ethical oversight. And then I want to do risk management. And then I want to do data management and governance. Maybe they use the same AI system and they just slowly work through all of these modules, building compliance, preparing for conformity that's due in August of 2026. It's a great way to get yourself probably 80 to 90% of the way to your conformity requirements. And oh, by the way, ForHumanity can share with you the rest of what we know about what compliance may look like. And behind the scenes, you can get 100% of the way there. Just maybe not all through the AI Policy Accelerator. Or maybe we introduce further modules in the future. I could see where we might near completion that we introduce a technical documentation module. We'd be happy to do that, right? All of this is in the name of fostering the ability to learn and understand what compliance with the EU AI Act looks like. Now, let me speak about AI literacy for a minute. AI literacy is different because it is about, well, it's first off, it's Article 4, and it is due or your responsibility as early as February 2nd of 2025. That's soon. It's even too soon for ForHumanity. We already have a group that is building learning objectives for AI literacy. We've defined 4 personas. The first persona are AI subjects. Think of these people as like data subjects, but they're impacted by AIs. Users, common terminology. We call them AI subjects. This is our first persona where we believe the law implies that you have a duty to train the people who will use the system on AI literacy. And what does that look like? Well, we're building out the learning objectives associated with what that looks like to train people on AI literacy. Remember, AI literacy, you have to train people in the context of the specific AI system. So we can only go so far with our learning objectives because it's context dependent, okay? We have 3 other personas. You have to train, if you are a high-risk AI provider. So if you're subject to the EU AI, you have to train all of your employees, not just the ones associated with the AI system. You have to train all of your employees on what's called AI literacy, again, under context, taking into account their technical expertise and their knowledge and so on. So when we talk about employees, we actually talk about a very low level of compliance. We talk about a very simple and plain language kind of teaching for AI literacy. The third persona is for senior management. We call it top management and oversight bodies. So all senior management and those employees who work with the AI system. So now this is all the detailed experts. And what we're going to teach them in AI literacy is very different than what we teach, let's say, the retail public or those AI subjects. And so again, we're taking into account their context, their expertise, and their training. And so we're building learning objectives. And you can imagine this is going to be much more about risk management. It's going to be much more about harms and how to avoid unintended consequences from these tools that can lead to negative impacts. And then finally, the fourth persona is what we call AI masters. So here we're going to skip a lot of the basic language because these are the people who have already developed the systems. So now we're going to focus very much on risk, things like bias mitigation as examples, okay? And so we've got 4 different levels of the ways that we're thinking about AI literacy, but we wanted to create this as a separate module as well because your necessary compliance with this is coming fast and furious. And we wanted to support the ability to meet this obligation, and thus we've established the AI literacy. But it's different. It doesn't have entry criteria. It has the existing work that our AI literacy group is already working on. But it doesn't have audit criteria other than the single audit criteria that says you have to make sure you're delivering AI literacy. And I could show you that audit criteria if you wanted to see it. Let me pause here and ask if you have questions about any of the 9 modules or about the participants and how the process will work just in terms of participants. Any questions from anybody?
We have a question in the chat. Are you focusing on commercial tools or also governments who are building tools to use?
Great question. We do not care about whether it's public or private AI. The only issue there might be funding in terms of the obligations for cost. Corporations obviously are building these tools for profit, and therefore having a cost associated with compliance simply makes sense. And so paying something into this process has a logical follow-on. The government side of things, budgets may be tighter, I can imagine. But at the same time, you want to make sure that we have the dedicated resources to drive the project forward. So I believe we would still ask for the same sort of funding support towards this. But if you are a member of uh, a sitting government developing this tool on behalf of the government, and you want to have that governmental conversation between ForHumanity and yourselves, happy to do that. Happy to do that separately. Did I answer the question? I still didn't look at it. Did I answer your question, whoever may have asked it? All right.
I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
there's another
Will,
question. How do
yeah.
volunteers go about signing up for the accelerator?
Okay, great. That's a great question as well. And I see that Willie asked that, so and she gave me a thumbs up, which is great. Signing up for this. So as I'm going to go through how everybody signs up. So and answer the question broadly. If you are a provider or interested in being a member, so I'll go back to that page. Hold on. Okay. If you are a provider or a member and interested in joining, you should contact me directly, and we will have a private conversation, and it involves contracts, full stop. So we are already developing contracts. Some of the people who have approached us already about being a provider and a member, we've had conversations about even jurisdiction of the contract, whether that might be New York or whether it might be French law. We are open to both conversations. Okay. So for members and providers, it's a contract. Okay. For everyone else, it's just a function of joining or being a part of ForHumanity. So let me explain how this works. Let me explain the practical aspects of operating one of these modules. Actually, I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to slide over to my Slack for just a second. ForHumanity operates a very large Slack community. Can you just confirm you're seeing my Slack? Is that right? Just a thumbs up. Yep, Ikran sees it. Great. Okay. So in here we have, as you can see, it's something north of 160 different working groups. Okay. Each working group is doing a specific role or task. So for example, this one right here, EU regs, this is our group that meets twice per week going through the EU AI Act. So if you came into this particular group, for example, and you look under this pin, you would see right here, this is our working document for the EU AI Act. Okay. Now, what's going to happen is, as a function of launching these modules, we will create 9 different additional working groups. So what does that mean for a notified body, for an audit firm, for an academic or a volunteer? All it means is that you need to sign up to join our Slack community. Here is the commitment that you are making. 100% of your commitment is this. You will provide your email address and you will agree to our code of conduct. That's it. If you do those 2 things, and you can do that, I'm going to type this into the chat. Bear with me a second. If you go to this link, if you go to that link, you will find a very small form. It asks for your name, it asks for your email address. We have the thing in there called affiliation. You can say who you work with or not, don't care. Okay. And then finally, you agree to the code of conduct. Once you do that, that comes through to my desk, and I basically arrange for you to go into our Slack. You get an invitation to our Slack. You can join any of those 9. I haven't created the modules yet. I'm going to do that probably tonight. But you can go and join any one of those 9 modules, all 9 of them if you want. And now you will be in the room and you will see every conversation that we have about meeting compliance satisfaction with that module. The project leaders will create regular meetings, and I'm going to show you this as well. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm going to show this to you now. Bear with me. I'm going to show you the main page of our website. Okay. What you will see shortly as well as we launch these modules, the AI Policy Accelerator modules. See this button up here in the right-hand corner? This is all of ForHumanity's public meetings. Okay. So if I click on this, and if I wait a moment, oh, it came up fast today. You can see all of the meetings that ForHumanity does that you are already welcome to join. EU AI Act drafting we do yesterday, and then we have a supplemental meeting at the same time tomorrow. We've got a meeting right after this on cognitive bias. We're doing Indian personal data protection. We do US AI state laws. Tomorrow we do consumer duty. We have our AI literacy meeting. We do a cybersecurity session. On Thursday, we do model risk management. We do large language models and digital workers. On Fridays, we do automated employment decision tools. Okay. These are existing meetings, and you know what's going to happen? There's going to be 9 other meetings that are going to populate this calendar. 1 for each module as it gets established. And maybe they'll meet twice a week. Maybe they'll meet once every day for a half hour. It's whatever the module decides is the best way to get this work done. And you will all be informed of when those meetings are. You can go to them as you can. Ideally, they'll be recorded if you can't make it. You can follow along on the progress. You can follow along on the process for all this work. You can participate as you see fit as a volunteer. And again, I want to get back to this details on volunteers. With the project leader, if you are a volunteer, and let's say there's 20 audit criteria in that entry criteria, okay? You might sign up and say, I'm going to facilitate or foster one of those audit criteria as a volunteer. You're not being paid. You're going to do this on your spare time. You're going to do it. Maybe it fits into your job. Who knows? Okay. But you're going to do this as you can and get it done as best as you can. And you're going to work with the project leader, and you're going to work with me, and you're going to work with the company who's the provider, and you're going to work with other members and notified bodies and auditors, and we're all going to develop this work together. But if you participate and lead one of those satisfactions, let's call it, okay? Once you have the project leader's approval that you've satisfied or met that obligation, you now earn that right to say, I participated in X, and you can share that publicly. You can share that with the world. We might hold off on it until we finish the module, essentially, but you will be able to share, I did this, or I led this, or I developed this template, or these guidance notes, or I was on the team that produced the deployer's guide. So once you achieve that satisfaction, do it on your weekends. Do it at night after work. Do it as part of your job if you can. Fantastic, right? But participate in the process and actually learn what it takes, and then have examples of that to show clients, to show your boss, to take back into your own company and go, this is what compliance looks like, and I don't think we're doing it, or I don't think we're meeting these duties, or it's a lot more work than we thought it was. Okay? These are all the benefits of the process. This is how you participate. You will join Slack. You will join the specific 9 modules that you want to join. Nobody's going to force you to do anything. If you stick your hand up and say, I'd like to volunteer, I guarantee you're going to get called on. That's the way ForHumanity works. Ikran, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Other questions about, and let me flip back to the slides. Other questions about process. All the work will be done in these Slack working groups. All the work will be led by a project manager from ForHumanity. Meetings will be set up. Meetings will be scheduled. You can join those meetings on a regular basis. You can work offline and asynchronously. You can participate and just watch. Okay. There's no verification for watching. You don't get a trophy for being in the room. You have to actually do the work because that's what the AI Policy Accelerator is about, is getting the work done. Okay. But if you do participate in getting the work done, then you will be as rewarded as best we can. And that's with the recognition of the work that you've done, but also obviously as you can imagine that we might have 4 providers day one, maybe just doing the first 4 modules or first 5 modules, perhaps. Okay. But as we produce these public reports, as companies have a good experience developing their compliance, building their compliance capacity, you can imagine where others may want to join this process. We have 2-ish years, right, to do this work. And so others may want to bring, we could start a risk management module day one, and then we could start a second group going through risk management 2 months later. It's fine by us. The project leader might be able to handle 2 projects, but maybe if there's a third or a fourth, maybe we have additional project leaders. Who might that project leader be for the third or fourth version? Could it have been somebody who was a heavy volunteer in the first version? Absolutely. Why? Because you have experience. You've learned how to do this. You've built up expertise. Okay. So there are advantages to volunteering your time by being involved in this process. I think the learning is second to none. Second to none. If we do this right, if we have all the participants in, if we use our consensus building process, if we generate robust compliance, if we begin to hear maybe informal feedback from the commission, from the AI board, yes, this is good stuff. All of that is hugely valuable to developing compliance with the EU AI Act, which is a difficult endeavor. I can share with you and show you examples of what audit criteria look like from in terms of ForHumanity's interpretation of these requirements. If you'd like to get into those details, if that's a useful example for you, then I can show you what kind of details we're talking about. But I want to pause here again and ask if you have any questions. I think Sarah just popped something in the chat. Nope, just saying thank you. So she's taken off, which is totally fine as well. All of this is being recorded. It will go into a main AI Policy Accelerator channel that I'll be creating later today, and you can follow along on anything that you missed. Other questions or about this process or about getting involved or Patrick is asking, and when I pause like this, it's easier to read the chat, obviously. So Patrick is asking how I see using AI to leverage this. I don't personally see how I'm going to use AI to leverage it, but I don't preclude that in any way, shape, or form. So as the project leads or other volunteers get involved, I'll take an example. I'll continue to use that same example, right? That transparent. Let me go back to, sorry, let me do this. Let me do this. I'm going to show you the EU AI Act certification scheme. Here it is. And what I want to show you is data management and governance. Okay. So it's the third criteria for data management governance. Can you all see this okay? Just maybe 1 or 2 thumbs up. Just you're seeing something called the EU Artificial Intelligence Act proposed provider only. Yes, very good. Veronica, thank you. Okay, so this third audit criteria, let me just walk you through. I'm going to skim parts of it, but in consideration of a code of data ethics. That means we need to have a code of data ethics in place. Veronica, you have a question. Go ahead. You're on mute if you don't know you're on mute. You can't see my screen. Okay, so let me stop and share. I'll reshare. Okay, now you can see it, yes? All right, good. Okay, so this is an audit criteria. I should have waited for the thumbs up. Now, sorry, Veronica, do you have a question or are you just hitting different reactions? You can come off mute if you want. Okay, all good. Yep. All right, cool. Okay, so this is our certification scheme. It's very detailed. I think it's 251 pages currently. And it gets into the details of what we think compliance looks like. So I'm just going to give you an example of this and answer Patrick's question about AI. In consideration of a code of data ethics. Okay, well, right there we have to draft something called a code of data ethics. Could I use AI to draft that? Yes, I could. Okay. And in the context of relevant design choices, the Algorithmic Risk Committee, this is the team of experts that oversee the high-risk AI system, shall establish a data governance and management policy for the training, testing, validation, and pipeline data sets. And it has to include all of the following. So already here, we're going to draft a policy. Could I use a large language model to help me draft the policy? Absolutely, I could. Okay. You're all barraging the barraging the chat. Absolutely. You know, Patrick's talking about, sorry, Sue's referencing to Patrick, different tools that you might use to develop this. There is nothing about our process that dictates what the process looks like. We have the overarching goal of going from entry criteria to exit criteria. But how someone satisfies this criteria right here, there's no dictate, okay? The output is a manual, right? The output is a policy. So in the end, we know what the evaluation criteria looks like. We know that we're going to have auditors and notified bodies who are going to review a data management and governance policy, and they're going to check to see if all these things are there. And what are these things? Okay, this is going to take me a moment. Bear with me, but it gets into the details of Annex 4 and Article 10. Okay, so in the context of a causal by the way, for those of you who don't know ForHumanity certification schemes, bold and capitalized means it's a defined term. So up in Section 3, we're in Section 5. Up in Section 3, you'll find definitions for most of these bold and capitalized terms. In the context of the causal hypothesis and ensuring that you have construct validity, you're going to assess and determine if there's ground truth availability, and you're going to document that in a specific report called the Business Rationale Report. You're going to do a necessity assessment for all non-personal data. Why is it only non-personal data? Because if you have personal data, well, then you need GDPR compliance. And by the way, we got a whole certification scheme for that. And that says you have to do a necessity assessment, and we define what a necessity assessment is. You're going to assess the availability, and you're going to document that. You're going to establish a reference data schema. So think about complying with this module. You have to start by building this policy, and building this policy document involves figuring out what data quality looks like. Establishing metrics, measurements, and thresholds for accuracy, availability, quantity, suitability, representativeness, anomalies, exceptions, and outliers, okay? A process and procedure to assess your sources. Are they calibrated? Are they accurate? Assuring conformance of source data with a reference data schema. Does it match up? Does the data schema match up to our source data? We're going to conduct something called an inclusivity risk assessment. As we get rid of anomalies, outliers, and exceptions. Sorry, we're going to plan to do this in the policy, and then later we're going to do the actual inclusivity risk assessment, okay? That's just data quality. Then we're going to do information quality, data age, authenticity, authority, provenance, relevance, legal basis, consent traceability, if that's applicable. What are we doing with special category data? Are we using that to mitigate bias? Metadata management, both syntactic and semantic, okay? All of this, what have we done about labeling, annotation, vocabulary, dictionary? How have we documented our process? Ensured that it's replicable, okay? Then we're going to have a data management documentation process for data integrity, cleaning, enriching, transforming, and aggregating. Guidance for the inclusion of synthetic data. That has to go into this policy. Do you use synthetic data? Well, you never use synthetic data. Is synthetic data banned? Well, document it in the policy. If you are going to use synthetic data, talk about how you're going to do it and what it's for. Is it for masking? Is it for enrichment and aggregation? Is it part of solving the balance and the proportionality of an inclusivity risk assessment? What have I done about security, data protection, security, data security? Pipeline data. Does my UX, UI, have I created that data schema? Described it in the data management and governance policy. This is one criteria associated with that module. Getting back to Patrick's question, can we use artificial intelligence to facilitate and foster developing this policy document? Absolutely. Might we have used artificial intelligence back here in our labeling process, our annotation process, or in a cleaning enriching process? Absolutely. All of these are possibilities. Okay. So the broad, simple answer to Patrick's question is I foresee AI being used where it's applicable and where it's a good tool. Absolutely. Other questions about what's going to go on in this AI policy accelerator? It's all very simple and very plain, or you're just going to challenge me for, yep, my pleasure, Patrick. So let me ask a question now. How many of you think that you'd be interested in participating in this AI policy accelerator process? Show of hands, or come on video and wave at me. Whatever it might be. Do you see the value and use to this process? And as you do, are you considering coming in as a provider? Are you considering coming in as a member? Are you considering coming in as a notified body or as an auditor, academic or volunteer? Do you have any particular questions about the role you might play? One thing I will do is, first off, let me do this. You are all welcome to contact me directly. All right, so I'm putting my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to connect. And this is all just about growing my followers. No, I'm totally kidding. It's a great way to connect with me real time through the messaging chat. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn. The other thing I'm going to do is give you my email address. So you can contact me by email as well. You'll especially want to do this if you are coming in as a provider or a member, because again, that's a contracting process. We've got to get, we're developing, as I've mentioned, a full set of contracts already. We want to protect your confidentiality. We want to support your control as a provider in this process. And we want to talk through getting this launched and rolled out. So if we talk about the timing of all of this, what we're going to have to do is we can't launch any module without a provider. So the first body of work, and this is honestly for all of you, help us find groups, organizations that are willing to bring an actual use case in and join one of these policy modules. Okay. We have a few who've already said that they are interested in doing this, and we will begin to contract with them over the next couple of weeks. The hope would be to look at a launch time period of roughly December 15th for the first module. And look, December 15th is a terrible time to start something. So maybe that's kind of a kickoff meeting to bring people together, to make an action plan that starts for January 1. Okay. The project lead will work with the group to figure out what the steps and what the process are. The project lead directly with the provider will figure out what the launch and the rollout looks like. And then each module will create its own cadence, will create its own process for meetings. As I mentioned, it could be one meeting, a half hour every day. Could be one meeting for an hour once a week. It's completely up to each module operator and to that project lead and to the provider who's bringing the AI tool. But we have to have providers, otherwise this doesn't work. Other organizations may want to come in as members, and that is also done under contract. So please reach out directly and we can have those conversations. And then everybody else coming in as a volunteer, a notified body, as an auditor, you're coming in through the Get Involved window. That's that link that I put into the chat. You register, you join the Slack, and that's how you can get started. Other questions? Paul, please.
Hi, Ryan. Hi, everyone. Just a quick comment on what you were saying about getting providers involved. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people in this group who have providers or people in their networks that are in touch with or part of providers. I think what might be useful is to have some kind of elevator pitch or short blurb or something that we can use to reach out to those people that will in turn reach out to their contacts in the providers, or if it's a shorter leeway than that, so that we can start to welcome people in. I think another example is recent contact with the Swedish DPA, which, you know, they said, this is interesting, but we've just got way too much on to kind of get involved with you right now. I think getting notified bodies and data authorities involved is going to require some kind of direct effort to kind of get them to see the value of this and to get involved.
Yeah, most of the notified bodies they tend to be for-profit groups. They're existing groups who work in the harmonized regulation sector who already do a lot of testing and evaluation. So it's not going to be as difficult as getting the actual national competent authorities or the market surveillance authorities. The elevator pitch that I would use, and you tell me if you think it's inadequate, is most of you arrived here through the LinkedIn post. I would use the LinkedIn post as a starting point, but also I can provide a PDF of the working document that I linked to for many of you, and that begins to get into very specific details. It is far from an elevator pitch. It's 31 pages, but that's because it's got an entry criteria example in there for governance, oversight, accountability. So I think between LinkedIn and this, we have an elevator pitch. If you think there's something that needs to go in between, then I think we can work on developing that. I think we would do that. So as I mentioned, I'm going to create a general room for the AI Policy Accelerator in our Slack. And so make sure you join that. It'll be called something obvious like AI Policy Accelerator. Most likely that's what it will be called. So join that. And if we develop these tools, we would place those tools in there for all of your use. You are all welcome to invite anybody. Okay. So you can reach out to friends and family and everybody who comes through the window of get involved can join. That's how we have 2,300 plus people. There was one person in ForHumanity in March of 2020, me. All other people have joined through word of mouth of just wanting to be a part of a community. Okay. So that's how everybody gets involved, with the exception of members and providers. So if you have somebody who might be interested in being a member, might be interested in being a provider, or some other, unusual circumstance, like a government official, okay, that might want to come in a certain way, you can point them directly to me. And you can do that through LinkedIn. You can do that through a 3-way email, or if they are in Slack, you can do a direct message to me. Paul, do you think the LinkedIn is sufficient?
It's a good starting place. You just get started and see what the responses are and then go from there, don't you? So
okay.
Yeah, good.
Maria, I haven't created the PDF yet. I'll drop a PDF into that channel once I establish the channel. Other questions? God, I thought for sure you'd have a zillion questions. Have I answered it all so perfectly? Or you're all just shy? Or you're all taking it in? It's a lot to take in. I get that too. Jay, is that a question since you're coming on video?
Yeah, just real quick. I missed the begin. I missed sort of the middle bit, and so I
Yep.
guess my question is about the confidentiality thing.
Yep.
And I know you did talk about it. What is the plan for volunteer? Is it just going to be all volunteers in are going to sign NDAs? I mean, how is that?
Yep. Okay.
How is
So
that going to be handled?
if I can assume, Shay, for just a second, I'm going to make you the provider. Okay. So you're the provider. You're contracting with For Humanity Europe directly. In there will be confidentiality clause where you control everything that's confidential. There's going to be two named persons under that confidentiality clause, myself and a project lead. Okay. So what you're going to agree in advance is that I and the project lead will interact with the provider on confidential information. So we will hold this information confidentially, and it's possible that myself and the project lead, we might create the audit satisfaction of whatever's being evaluated. We might do the work just ourselves, or we might say, no, I need to bring Greg and Andrew in to help facilitate this. So now I'm going to come to you and say, Andrew and Greg are kind of my experts on data management and governance, and they're going to come in and participate with the project lead, with myself, and the four of us are going to be the confidential group. Okay. Number one, you will approve that. You're going to look and see who's Andrew. Oh, it's not my competitor, right? It's not somebody I'm worried about seeing some of these details. I've vetted them. I've looked at their CV. They're, fantastic resource. Love to get to know them, bring them into the inner circle. And then For Humanity will do an NDA. So we will have an NDA in our contract to begin with, Shay, under this agreement. And we will advance that NDA for Andrew and Greg in that example. And so they will be covered by that confidentiality, but only once you approve them. And that's what I mean by your total control is you will agree who sees any confidential information. And then remember, we're trying to produce a public report about this. So then we're also going to agree what information could be shared publicly or redacted perhaps with the public report in the final output or in what we share with an auditor or what we share with a notified body in the module because they're not operating under confidentiality. So we have to figure all that out with the provider as to what can be shared, what can't be shared, how it's shared, when it's shared, and so on. Shay, did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Let me ask the question back. Does that seem sufficient? I know this is one of my biggest concerns is protecting intellectual property, protecting confidentiality for providers, because I think it's one of the big reasons that they might not want to participate in this process. Certainly from a cost basis, this is a fantastic deal. They're getting, they're getting fantastic amounts of compliance for a very low cost. So there's great value in that. They're doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it to advance the public report. They're doing it for advancing the work and building compliance for lots of other people. So these are all great reasons to do it. So I've been very focused on what are the reasons why they wouldn't want to do it. And this confidentiality to me is the most important part. But do we feel like we've addressed this as best as possible? Are there other things that we could do? I'm certainly open to ideas and discussions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to depend on the provider. I know, I mean, ones that we've worked with, yeah, they'll probably want a DPIA and there's going to have I mean, some of these things, there's a bit of a reputational risk that they might worry about, like who it'll be a self-selected group of providers that are either don't think they're in super high risk category, and so it's sort of a little bit of a less of a worry, or they're in a high risk category and they feel pretty confident about what they're doing and they're looking for market leadership or something like that. So it will be self-selected, but I guess that's okay. I mean, because this is meant to be a trial and to learn. But I think there will be probably some issues about intellectual property, especially when it gets down to some of the documents that outline, I mean, just the ones you went through. I mean, there's a lot of description of the algorithmic system, and that's where they'll get a little bit worried about it. But it's not
Yeah.
insurmountable.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. We were having that discussion in our EU AI Act meeting yesterday. The difference between what has to be produced publicly in technical documentation versus what you have to have maybe behind the scenes to show a replicable, robust process where you're to be investigated for some reason. Balancing between what has to be filed officially according to Annex 4 and what has to be, kind of robustly documented behind the scenes. It's a balancing act. And honestly, we have opinions about that, but our opinion is just, one of many opinions. And we're going to all work together to figure out what that looks like, whether standards has advice on it, or in some cases, we're expecting the AI board eventually to build templates of what conformity will look like. And so we will eventually adjust our process to fit those templates and the guidance that they will, the AI board was built to produce guidance. So we're going to expect guidance happening all throughout these module developments that will change and adjust our process as well. And so, yeah, Shay, it will be a very self-selecting group that gets involved. I think they will do it for market leadership. One other reason for those of you who might be in touch with providers, the upstream, downstream duties, as the act becomes enforceable, will change your selling process. Buyers, procurers of these tools are going to start to ask, have you achieved EU AI Act compliance? What are you doing about EU AI Act compliance? And this is a fantastic answer to that question. So I think the sales and marketing positioning is extremely valuable to providers to begin to get involved in this process. Everything we're going to be doing is public. So we're going to be saying, provider XYZ just agreed to sign up to do, and we're launching on December 15th, the risk management module. We're going to scream that from the rooftops. And I hope they're going to scream that from the rooftops with all of their clients and customers as well. And so I do think that that's why they will get involved and why they will, dedicate real resources to getting this done. Does that make sense, Shay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Other thoughts and questions? I set aside, another 32 minutes. I'm happy to give you 32 minutes of your life back if that's valuable. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you have. So please don't be shy. There's no imposter syndrome in ForHumanity. All questions are valid. All right, then let's plan to wrap up there. If you are providers and potential members, please reach out to me specifically and let's start those contract discussions. If you are anyone else, any of the other groups, please jump into the Get Involved tab. I'll go check and see if anybody's already registered and start inviting you to Slack. And I'll use these 31 minutes to set up the modules as well, so you can start to join the modules you think you'll get involved with. Thank you for all of you that came. I'll just let you know that before I turned this on, there were 130 registrations. I didn't see what the count was, but I think we had close to 50 people in the room at any given point in time. So a really great turnout. And look, I hope we have all 9 modules running with many providers. That would be a perfect world. So please share with others, share the LinkedIn post, and we'll take it from there. Thanks to all of you. Have a great day, and hope to see you in these different modules. Take care.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep, cheers.